All right, we'll get started here. We're in Genesis 45, continuing the narrative. And so if we'll remember, Joseph kind of set him up last time. And Judah ended up taking a leadership position and an intercessory position, and went, basically approached Joseph, which, by the way, really shows how far he was taking his intercession, because you don't just approach an official like that and laid down, hey, look, this is what's going to happen. We've already wronged, we've already bereaved my father of one of his sons, and now, the son of his youth is, this is him. We can't return without him. And, if we do, it'll just send him down to the grave. And so now we see Joseph's reaction beginning in 45. Then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stood with him while Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Does my father still live?" But his brothers could not answer him. I was mid-verse, man. But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." So they came near. Then he said, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. But now do not therefore be grieved or be angry with yourself because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. These 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither sowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt." All right, so we have, I got a very interesting question. The last time I was teaching, someone was reading ahead and sent me a text and was like, "I've heard that the reason he had to send everyone out and the reason he called them in close was because he revealed he revealed his circumcision, and that was how he revealed himself." And I was like, well, it doesn't say that in the text. There is nothing that hints that in the text. You get this royal official that just says, "I'm Joseph. Is Dad still around?" That's going to throw people for a loop. And he's like, "Okay, no, come here, calm down," because he's making it less formal. And not to mention, every other time he's had an extreme emotional outburst, he's separated himself from the other Egyptians. It's not, someone in that high stature is not supposed to just break down, And so that was one that threw me for a loop. It's like I wasn't even aware that this was being taught. And that it's funny because, again, this kind of goes along with what I was talking about over Yom Kippur, where there's all these kinds of speculations, and it's like, you can't make a doctrine out of it. You can entertain this, maybe, because that would be a surefire way, And we've talked before about swearing oaths back with Abraham, where when it says under his thigh, literally it's under his loins, and so we know that the culture wasn't as it wasn't as risque as it is now. It would be an identity marker. Is it possible? Okay, I'll grant the possibility, but we can't pull that from the text. And that's something, that we need to keep our mind on. we can entertain speculation, but we can't say anything definitively on it if we can't pull it from the text. But yeah, that one just, I had to share it because it threw me for a loop, man. I had never heard that one. But Joseph points out, he's like, by the way, I'm your brother, and then he qualifies that by saying, whom you sold into Egypt. And it's like, okay, well, you know about this, you've got to be him. But he says,
he spoke to them in Hebrew too.
Yes, yeah, because previously he had been speaking with interpreters, and well, now obviously, yeah, he's speaking directly to them. So, because he sent out all his other officials. So yeah, that's a good point. When all of a sudden he switches up languages, that would be a big hint.
Probably with the same accent that they had.
Maybe, because we don't know how. Well, he probably spoke Hebrew in his household. We don't know. And again, that's something that we can speculate on, but we can't know for sure. But, he's told, do not... Oh, Carol.
To me, Joseph seemed like a very private person.
Mm-hmm.
And when he did this, he ordered everybody out except the brothers. He wanted to do this privately and to make them understand that he was not their enemy.
Okay.
I think that's really what this is about. And I kind of thought, this is a lesson for everybody.
Yeah, well, you should handle highly charged things like this in private.
Do you think that the reason he cried was because he saw that his brothers didn't treat Benjamin the way they treated him, but stood up for him?
That is a large part of it. We know that that's, part of the test is that he kept showing favoritism to Benjamin and kept showing, and yet they just stuck up for him. They maintained a unit. He was able to see that there was genuine repentance on that front. Oh, you guys don't have this root of bitterness in you that you had before if someone shows favoritism. You kind of just rejoice with, oh, this person's being blessed, which is how we should be, by the way. If someone has and someone has even more, be thankful for what you have and rejoice that the other person was blessed. And, yeah. But he points out, that ultimately it was God that had sent him before so that he would preserve life. And there's this great quote that I heard, and it's, the one who puts everything into God's hands will soon see God's hands in everything. When you really just are able to sit back. Oh, I'm sorry. You're Linda.
No, that's
okay.
Say it again.
Okay, yeah, I'll say it again. I will. It was one who puts everything into God's hands will soon see God's hands in everything. Amen. So if you really are trusting in God, relaxing, watching Him provide, soon, you'll be able to, it may take some time, but you'll be able to go, this is where God's provided for me. I left things in His hands and He provided. I left things in His hands and He provided. Because suddenly if you're leaving everything in God's hands and you're realizing that it's not by your own power, it gives you a more thankful attitude. It gives you a more reflective attitude. And since you know that it wasn't you that did it, and you left it to God and this is the way it turned out, then you can only give credit to Him. Rightfully, by the way.
Can I just give a happy witness? I came very sad because once again my life changed. And then that's perfect. And now I'm free to have some tabernacle time, which I never have.
Awesome.
Because I'm not working. And so I'm just really rejoicing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was lost and then I got found again. So yeah, hallelujah. Thank you.
Things just seem to be perfectly coming up today. It's wonderful. But he points out to them, because he's actually had awareness. Everyone else, as you see, he gives the warning to his brothers. So seems like no one else has any idea that this is going to go on for 7 years. And so he points out, he's like, look, the famine's been 2 years. You know, we're still in for another 5. And he says there will neither be plowing nor harvesting. And again, ultimately, he was sent ahead to preserve life. And we've talked about this before. Life supersedes ritual. You see a donkey falling in a pit, it's the Sabbath, you help them out. You know, it's lawful to do good on the Sabbath.
That's what Jesus said.
It's lawful to do good, period.
No matter when.
Yeah. And then in verse 8, he reiterates, you know, it wasn't you who sent me here, because he's looking ultimately, you know, it wasn't you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, lord of all his house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Now, some people in the commentaries have said, you know, we really can't find this title, a father to Pharaoh, so we're not really sure if this is one of those instances where they just kind of made up a title, or whether they're using a very specific title. I'm kind of under the impression that it's not really a title at all. He's become a man that Pharaoh respects. Pharaoh put him in charge of all the household. I mean, that's kind of just allegorically the role of a father. You handle all of the affairs. So I think because we don't see any evidence of this being an actual title, I'm under the impression it might not be a title. He might just be describing his relationship in a way that they would understand it. Because they know he's in a high position, but they probably don't know exactly how high. So verse 9, hurry up and go to my father and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord over all of Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry, and you shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near to me and to your children and your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there are still 5 years of famine. And behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see that it is my mouth that speaks to you. So shall you tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, and of all that you have seen, and shall hurry and bring my father down here. And this is kind of important. He points out that, you know, you guys are the witnesses. You've seen it. You're not getting this information secondhand to try to lure him out. You know, you can reassure him, you've seen this. And if your eyes don't convince him, Benjamin's eyes have seen me. And again, he specifically singles out Benjamin. There's no adverse there's nothing adverse here. No adverse reaction.
Joseph probably didn't know the story. His brothers told their father about how some animal devoured him.
It was brought up earlier.
Oh.
I believe it was brought up earlier. It's been a few weeks now.
Oh.
Yeah, now I'm just pondering. I can't remember off the top of my head if that was part of the account or not.
When they sold him to Egypt,
Yeah. Oh, I know
they
that.
was coat in the blood.
Yeah, I know that. I'm just trying to remember which narrative, because I know it comes up in one of the narratives. I'm just not sure if it was when they were recounting it to Jacob, or if it was in one of the narratives when they were recounting it to Joseph.
If I remember correctly, after they sold Joseph to Egypt, they dipped his toes in the blood and told their father a ferocious beast about him.
Yes, and like I said, that did happen. Just in the narrative when they were recounting it, I'm not sure if they had brought that up. I know it was brought up at least once, that he was thought to be torn by beasts, but I don't remember if it was brought up by Jacob or to Joseph. Diana. Or Diane.
No, I think it's whenever they showed up in Egypt, and then he was asking them about, their family, and they said, well, it's us, the brothers, and one stayed at home and one is not. And that's when he noticed that there's someone that's not.
Oh.
I thought it was the father.
Yeah, it might be. But yeah, they do know that he's at least, well, know in air quotes, that Joseph was considered to be dead.
Yeah.
That was known.
When he first told them, they were shocked.
Yeah.
Right to the core.
Okay.
They must have been stunned.
So we're gonna go verse 14. Well, I mean, he did have to reassure them, and okay, come close. You know, it outright said in, it said in verse 3, his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. By the way, I did learn something kind of interesting. There's apparently no actual word for presence in Hebrew. Everywhere the word presence is, it's face. You're in the face of, because if you're looking someone in the face, the rest of them is there too.
That makes sense.
Which also brings kind of a new look on the Aaronic benediction. Cause your face, your presence to shine on us. Anyway, so verse 14. Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck. Moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. And after that, his brothers talked with them. Now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house. Now this is verse 16, and this is making a callback to verse 2, where it says, he wept aloud, and the Egyptians of the house of Pharaoh heard it. It's not necessarily saying that all the way over in Pharaoh's house he was weeping so loud. It's just he sends everyone else out, he weeps, word gets back to Pharaoh. So verse 16, now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. So it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your animals and depart, go to the land of Canaan, bring your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you are commanded, do this, take carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. Bring your father and come. Also do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. And so now you have Joseph already saying, go back, bring your family, and everything like this. Now you have Pharaoh on top of it giving additional permission that's slightly different. Don't just go and bring them back. Go and use the provisions of Egypt to bring them back. So they're actually, that you'll have more than enough to bring them back. We're financing this trip. We're making this happen. You're good to go. Don't worry about it. And, they make the point. Yeah. And they make the point, don't even worry about all your stuff, like how you're going to pack up. Just come on over here. Everything all the best of Egypt is yours. Yeah. And, you got to think, the only reason they've lasted this well, really, is because of Joseph. So Pharaoh is probably very grateful toward Joseph. And when he finds out, oh, you have family? Your family's reconnected? Because somewhere along the lines, I'm pretty certain that Pharaoh knew that he was a servant, that he was just brought in as a slave. Potiphar worked for Pharaoh as captain of the guard. So anyway, continuing in verse 21. Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them carts according to the command of Pharaoh, and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave to them, all of them, to each man, changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. And by the way, I want to point out this also. We talked about how valuable clothes were. All of their garments were torn. So he gave them all new clothes. They all tore their clothes and went with them. And so they got new clothes. But to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. Then he sent his father these things: 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for his father for the journey, Then he sent his brothers away, and they departed. And he said to them, "See that you do not become troubled along the way." Some of them say, some translations say, "Don't quarrel on your way back." Almost one of those things. Yes, I showed favoritism to Benjamin again. You've been good so far, but don't get in a fight on your way back.
Well, Benjamin didn't put him in the well either,
Yeah.
right? I mean, he didn't put him in.
Yeah, no, he didn't. And then also, he's his only other full brother. He's his only full brother.
I mean, you know,
So, yeah, it's his only full-blood relative.
thought it was-
He's also assuming his role as a father to his own family.
Kind of, yeah.
Because his father's an old man.
So, verse 25 then. Then they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan, to Jacob their father, and they told him, saying, "Joseph is alive, and he's governor over the land of Egypt." And Jacob's heart stood still because he didn't believe them. But when they told him all the words which Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the carts which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. Then Israel said, "It is enough. Joseph my son is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." And that's the end of that narrative. We're going to get on the journey back in 2 weeks. A lot of ups and downs getting to this point. That pretty much finishes that one out.